right, so I'm Robin Sutherland. I head up clinical operations for Renovia. And this is my colleague, Maddie.
Yep. Hi, this is Maddie Culbreth. I am the Chief Operating Officer for ObvioHealth. And ObvioHealth is a virtual research organization that's concentrating our efforts on the decentralized clinical trial model, pretty much just bringing clinical trials into our homes. You know how to,
Next slide.
I think you have to use that.
Oh, I have to do this. Sorry. Okay. All right, so what am I doing wrong? Green button? There we go. All right, so Renovia, we're 5 years old. We are founded on a platform to provide support for women with pelvic health disorders. We have a device as well as a smartphone app, and we're FDA cleared for the treatment of stress, mixed urge, and overactive incontinence.
So when we first started working with the Renovia team and we first started identifying the needs of the project and what the outcomes was that they wanted to be, we realized that our business model, our structure was in perfect alignment with the needs of this project. And we knew that we would be able to provide a pretty comprehensive solution to their project. So much like any other CRO, we offer the same type of services, data management, biostats, scientific clinical affairs team, of course, on top of our digital platform system. But it was our virtual site team that was sort of like the chef's kiss for this project, because they were able to bring forth a kind of concierge service to our participants and help them manage this trial throughout the way. So just like any other site team that you would find at a brick and mortar site, we have investigators and coordinators just the same way, but we operate remotely. The difference is that they, really support the participant through the beginning of the trial through the end with immediate access to this team, answering their questions, helping them with their device, the app, answering, concerns, addressing anything that they needed. And that was very important for this trial because we needed to make sure we stayed really in touch with the participant, had that human connection with them, even though we were working remotely, to ensure that they stayed retained, compliant, and all the way through the end.
Okay, so the goal for this study was to really compare the LEVA platform against what are traditionally known as Kegel exercises, at-home pelvic floor exercises. I guess this sounds better if I stand this way. So it was an 8-week clinical study, and we were looking at about 350 women who could participate with us. The context is that we were going to be delivering this from first enrollment to very top line readout during COVID. We conceptualized and wrote a protocol to use between 15 and 20 clinical sites, knowing that they each typically enroll about 2 patients per week, and we had really tight timelines. Well, we were getting really concerned because academic medical centers can be very challenging to work with, and it's hard to really push them. So we thought, well, do we want a virtual site? I don't know. And then COVID started to be something that we were hearing about in January. So we made a decision to try and get our key academic medical leaders on board with us to run a DCT, fully virtual study, first done in the Uro-gyno space. So we were on the bleeding edge in that space. There was another concern that people had, which is so sad because I am in the older woman category, and people assume that 50 and up, and let alone I'm now 60, we don't know how to use smartphones. That's insane. But we also knew that we wanted 20% of our women. Yeah, well, I live on my smartphone. I'm the one who teaches 25-year-olds sometimes tech, so I think it's funny, although I'm not that much on TikTok unless it's cute animal videos. And I have too many of those. That being said, would they be able to handle this and handle 2 apps on a smartphone and a device? A site-based study was really not going to be an option for us, and we knew that PIs are going to be very concerned about that, so we did explore the DCT option. So some of the concerns that we knew would come up is tech issues. So if you think about academic researchers, they have a very, I'm going to say, rigid way of doing things. I mean, it is exquisite. It is tried and true. And now we're going to have them in a study where they're never going to see a patient face to face. So that meant finding lots of validated surveys that they could be comfortable with. But also patient tech issues. So would they be able to handle the Obvio Claim It app for direct entry of their information, as well as if they were in the LEVA arm, the LEVA app and the device? And how would we protect their privacy if they did have tech support issues? Recruitment, it had never been done in the Uro-gyno space. The closest at the time was a Pfizer study that had thousands and thousands of folks with only double digits completing the study. And so that was a huge risk for us. E-consent, usually when there's e-consent, there's also some sort of face-to-face with a patient, that final visit, to be sure if they had any questions, they'd be able to have them answered before they were signing and enrolling. So how could we do this effectively? Training, could we train women effectively, both how to do pelvic floor muscle exercises and the LEVA effectively remotely? Again, older women. Patient engagement, would they be able to really engage through a pretty comprehensive screening process before they got into the study, and then be consistent through 8 weeks of surveys? And then how would we track AEs?
So we knew that enrolling women into the study was going to be difficult. Why? Because, well, we're busy. We're busy taking care of our children, our families, nurturing our careers. And we knew that no one was going to want to spend an hour in the waiting room of a doctor's office and then another hour in the exam room only to talk about, a pretty sensitive topic, something that could be intimate, maybe even embarrassing. Nobody wants to talk about their leakage. So we knew that if we can build this in a fully decentralized way, where the women can participate, use the device, see if it improved their symptoms in any way, and do it from the comfort of their own homes without ever being burdened by going into an office, we knew that it was going to be a very easy way for us to enroll the target population for the study. And indeed, that's exactly what happened.
All right, so again, we were the very first within the Uro-gyno space. And so it was really going to be very risky for us and our PIs and the institutions involved to take this on. So we did everything we could to de-risk it.
Lisa, but how did we do that? How did we enroll these participants? Well, we used precision digital recruitment via social media. So what we did is that we placed very creative ads on social media platforms like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, things like that. But we didn't want to place those ads in front of everybody because, one, it's going to cost a lot of money. Two, it's going to take too much time, and then she's not going to be very happy with us. So we had to find and make sure that we presented those ads in front of our exact target population. But how did we find that? So what we do, let me just give you an analogy. So just think that you're trying to find Mercedes-Benz buyers, right? Well, you're not going to go to a big, huge car show where there's hundreds and hundreds of brands and people are shopping for all these brands. You're going to go right to the Mercedes-Benz dealership because you have a captive audience right there. And it's going to take you a lot less time and cost you a lot less money if you go right there. Well, this is the same kind of concept. What we do is that we do internet searching behaviors and study the internet purchasing behaviors of these women. So when the women were looking for or searching for urinary incontinence or pelvic floor disorder or purchasing items for those conditions, we knew that was our target population and we would place those ads right in front of them. So kind of picture this. You're going through Facebook through all those, mind-numbing posts, and you see this ad that says, do you have urinary incontinence? Do you suffer from that? Do you, want some help with that or some relief? The woman looks at that and says, well, yeah, I have that. I would love to have some relief from that. They click on the ad. They review the ad. The ad will tell them things like, what's the study about? How long is your participation? What are you going to have to do? What's involved in this study? They then complete the pre-screening questionnaire, just a few simple questions to assess their eligibility. And then they move on. If they meet the eligibility criteria, then they move on into downloading the app and the onboarding process. And so the whole thing begins. We knew that we were going to have to target our younger population much differently than we would our older population. So the ads had to reflect the age group. So you can see here that we had a lot of ads that we put together, but these were kind of our top performing ads. For the younger population, we used, images that would resonate with them, techie kind of ads, computer, keyboards, things that they could identify with. For the middle-aged woman, we used, travel bags filled with undergarments, because when you're a woman and you're traveling on business, you're going to need a lot of underwear if you have UI. And for the older population, we used, the clothesline with the undergarments because we knew that age group would resonate with that. But you would think that a recruitment method this sophisticated would cost a ton of money. I actually thought that too when I first, started, dipping my toe into the DCT model. I thought, God, this recruitment method sounds awesome, but it feels like it could be expensive. But it really wasn't. We spent about between $1 and $2 per click on these ads now for the recruitment.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Basically, obviously for the younger population, they don't suffer from UI as much. They're harder to get, more expensive to get. The older population, they do suffer from this condition, easier to get, a lot less expensive. And you see there, all the all of the comments that we had from one of the posts where people were saying, women were saying, oh my God, I have this, I would love to have something like this. I hope I get chosen. And that made us feel good because we knew we were reaching the population. We had over 6,000 responses of people that wanted to participate. So this recruitment method was perfect.
All right, so it was pretty robust, the screening process. Again, lots of validated surveys covering everything from frequency of bladder leakage, the UDI-6 score, looking at women's prolapse, looking at sexual dysfunction, looking at fecal incontinence, etc. We also then used a bladder diary, which for anyone who's ever used that, it's sort of a cross between a cognitive assessment and how often do people leak, because it's really very hard for people to fill these out. There's never been a good one. So what we did is we had two physicians take a look at it. One was the medical director for Renovia, and if he thought it passed muster, then it went to our Kaiser Permanente PI, who's a urogynecologist, to be sure she concurred before they were ever moved into the enrollment phase. The enrollment phase was then managed by the University of Alabama and the University of New Mexico. Both had done clinical research in the urogyne space, and University of New Mexico also had done quite a bit on digital technologies as well. So they were great partners for us there. And then both UAB and University of New Mexico managed the training for us. And then Mass General, they partnered with us around AEs. So if an AE was reported, the medical director at Obvio managed it first and then escalated it to Mass General.
Once the participants hit the screening phase, they would complete the screening questionnaire, and then if they met the eligibility criteria, they of course would move on into the study. And that's actually when our virtual site team kicked in. They needed to make sure that they paid attention to the participants, their compliance, make sure that they worked with them on staying engaged and retained. And that it was a great way for us to be able to stay in communication with our participants. But they do have help with that. We do have system programmed alerts that we build in while we are designing the project. So when we were meeting with the Renovia team and designing the project, we created system programmed alerts, notifications, and reminders that we strategically placed throughout the study. And we did that at the very beginning. That way, when the participants, it was time to complete a task, they would get a notification on their phone that said, hey, don't forget you have a questionnaire that's due to be completed now. Or, hey, don't forget you had some research-related tasks this morning that need to be done. So this was a great way of maintaining our patients engaged throughout the study. They knew what they were supposed to do. And then on the back end, if we knew that somebody was not completing their tasks on time, our virtual site team was able to then reach out to those participants and get them right back on track. So it really helped.
All right, from a training standpoint, we felt very strongly that anyone participated in the study was going to have benefit. And so what we did is the active folks had LEVA, of course, but the active control were the Kegel exercises, and the American Urogyne Society produced a piece from what they call the Voices for Pelvic Floor Disorders. And we used their handout in the second picture. We created a video around it so that patients could watch that. And then they had 3 onboarding phone calls with urogynecology research nurses, the ones who were always in the clinic working with patients during site-based clinical studies. And so they provided 3 calls to be sure that women understood how to do them, if they were doing them correctly, the frequency, and then the intensity of how you ramp up their pelvic floor muscle exercises. Here we go. Oh, that's mine. Sorry. So we haven't done this in a bit. So from a data capture standpoint, the women had to all download the Claimant app and be able to input their information. So you see, for example, the Bladder Diary here. The progress was tracked by both the University of New Mexico and the University of Alabama to be sure that people were in fact collecting the data and submitting it as needed. And ObvioHealth, as we talked about, was the first line to look at AEs and then passed it forward to Melina Weinstein at Mass General. So the Bladder Diary, we looked at beverage consumption, how frequent the leaks were, how often were they urinating, difficulty emptying their bladder, how bothersome was leakage. And women don't go to see a physician and talk about leakage unless it hits a certain bothersome level. And we wanted to be sure to reduce any criticism of our study design that we did not accept people in the study who wouldn't already, based upon prior research, have sought out their OBGYN or their urogynecologist to talk about their leakage. And then if there was pelvic organ prolapse or prolapse with bowel syndrome, we made sure that we tracked that, and we may or may not have included them in the study because enough vaginal prolapse and you can't insert the device, therefore they wouldn't be able to participate.
So there was a bunch of great outcomes into this project that we were pretty proud of. The first one, we sort of already talked about it. We had a great recruitment outcome for this project. We did have over 6,000 responses of women that wanted to participate, but we were able to enroll 350 women in less than 14 weeks. And you and I both know that's super fast. You know, we were super happy about that. And the fact that it didn't cost a whole lot of money. And if you're in a traditional setting, at a traditional site, you're going to probably spend between $600 and $2,000 per participant to enroll your participants. And that's a lot of money. But we spent about $67 per participant. And I think Robin and her team were happy about that.
So happy.
And we were too. But, you know, most importantly, we had a really diverse sample size, a diverse population group. And that's because the recruitment method that we use allowed for so much diversity. We're not geographically bound in any way. See, when you're at a traditional site, you have to enroll within that city, within that site, within a radius of that site. And we don't have those boundaries at all. We can enroll from anywhere around the world, in this case from the United States, and that allowed us to have a great sample size here. We also were able to have about over 20% of our population was over the age of 65. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, how did they manage, the device? How did they manage the app? Were they able to get through the process? And it's no problem. I'm going to show you the compliance rates in a minute. But our, mature audience, I'll say, they understood the assignment. They absolutely understood the assignment. They did very good. And our compliance rates for that age group was fantastic. The second, go ahead, Robin.
I was going to add one thing that was so great about having such a virtual model is we were able to pinpoint zip codes. So as we were lagging in some of the older population, I targeted the villages in Orlando. I targeted the huge communities outside of Philadelphia that had assisted living and retirement so that we could be sure we did that. We did the same thing, targeting populations outside of Albuquerque, New Mexico, folks who couldn't traditionally maybe get into an academic medical center because of so many of the barriers that are there, but we really wanted to give them options. So that's why this was such a robust way to recruit.
Yeah. And that's, full credit to our sister company, One in Health, because they, we work very closely together. They manage the recruitment for our studies and a million other studies in the world. So we, are very happy to have that kind of connection with that team because they did a fantastic job. We also had, really strong patient engagement. That in order to really get a good sample size, you have to maintain that patient engagement and you have to try to complete your subjects. Well, our virtual site team was really responsible, I think, for maintaining that strong engagement and getting our participants through the end of completion. But I'll tell you, when you work at a traditional site, I've been in the traditional research setting for 30 years, so a long time. And I know that when your participant wants to reach out to you, they have to call the office, they leave a message, you may not get back to them the same day, maybe it's the next day. But the beauty of this is that we have built-in chat functionality within our app, and the participants are able to reach our virtual site team, our investigators and coordinators, instantly through instant message, through the chat within our app. So they don't have to wait now a day or two to address their concern or their issue. They get immediate responses from our team. So that was a great way of maintaining that engagement. Plus, we did have a 15-minute huddle every day where we talked about specifically the device and any issues that we may have. So it was very helpful. And that strong patient engagement, next slide.
Well, just one thing. With the 15-minute huddle, it was both Renovia as well as Obvio. And in addition, we had a weekly meeting with all of our site teams. So it was Obvio, Renovia, UAB, Mass General, et cetera. We were all there together to be sure everything was moving smoothly. And if there was a need, we'd send an IRB amendment through just to be sure we had the right protocol in place.
Yeah. And that led to these great, compliance rates. If you don't have your patients complete, then you don't have a great sample size and you can't power your study. And above all, Renovia said to us, Robin said, our patients must complete. Because if they don't complete, they don't have the data to be able to do a proper analysis of the data. So we knew we had to make sure that we completed our participants. And you'll see here, we had 88% completion of our participants less than 65. But look, over 65, 91% completion rate. That's incredible. So we knew that they totally got and knew how to navigate the device and the app. And that was in turn because of our virtual site team. We call them the coach team, which stands for Clinical Oversight and Coordination Hub. Robin calls them the secret sauce for her project. So besides tracking compliance and retention and all that for our participants, really they also maintain the safety oversight of our participants. So when they have an adverse event at a traditional setting, you may find out about it next time you see them, a week, 2 weeks, a month, whenever. But with here, we have real-time adverse reporting of this project. So when the participants reported an adverse event, they knew about it right away, and we can do trend analysis on those adverse events. And how it works very quickly is that we'll send a notification every day to our participants, or however we structure it, to ask, how are you feeling today? Do you have anything to report? If they say no, then that's great. If they do have something to report and they say yes, the system will automatically, by system built-in intelligence, deploy a health status change form. And it'll ask them questions automatically. It has nothing to do with the coach team. It'll ask, tell me about the issue today. The participant will say, I have a fever. And then the system will say, when did the fever start? When did it stop? Did you take anything for your fever? And if they say, yes, I took something, the system automatically deploys a concomitant medication form. What did you take? Tylenol. How much did you take? When did you start? When did you stop? It'll ask all these questions relevant to this adverse event. When it's done collecting the information, the virtual site team is alerted that there's an adverse event that has been reported. They then process that adverse event, contact the participant, and then process that adverse event through resolution or completion. So you see, that's a gift. That is a gift in our industry that we've never had before. And it's amazing to be able to collect those adverse events and then trend them to see if there's anything that's alike for anybody else. But the most important thing is that we were able to achieve statistically significant outcomes of the LEVA device over the Kegels group. So you can see here that the primary outcome actually for this project was the UDI, the urinary distress inventory. And the women reported that a lot less distress, urinary distress, using the LEVA device over the Kegels group. And from changes from baseline to week 8 were pretty amazing. So same thing with the perceived improvement. They reported that using the LEVA device, they had much better or very much better improvement over the Kegels group. So we were thrilled for Renovia. That's exactly what we were hoping would happen and we would get from our data.
And the only thing that would have been better if it wasn't COVID, because if women were leaving the house, the Kegel group may have had a lot more leaks. That's just my hypothesis. Yeah. I'm sticking with it. All right, so we've talked a lot about what the design looked like. It might almost seem simplistic, but darn, it was hard to pull this off and get consensus among everyone. But the Medical Device Network awarded us excellence in an RCT in the R&D category, and we were up against all the big pharmas. So we were really very pleased with ourselves because this was a labor of love and done for under $2 million as well. So that was wonderful for us. In addition, we have published. So if you are curious, you can go to the Green Journal, ACOG's journal. It was in print last month. It was online in March. It's open access. And that's where we talk about all the details if you're really curious about how we pulled this off. All right, so every study has opportunities for improvement, and we started to find those immediately. So as we were designing it, one of the challenges was that when you're looking at a cell phone screen, it has to be user friendly, and we can't risk a negative study because there's 3 questions per screen. So we pushed, and Obvio accommodated us. 1 question per screen, nice contrast between text and background. And the text size had to be large enough. Again, we're not risking 40-plus-year-old women who may or may not have reading glasses answering something as they had not intended. Now I've just had a negative readout for no good reason. Bladder Diary, time zone was a major issue. Initially, everything was collecting on GMT, but we had women across the 3 US time zones. So we had to line that up because we'd be reporting a number of leaks per day. And drink reporting. Again, it seems simple. You have a cup of coffee in the morning. You write down that 7:30. Fine, but what if you picked up a big 32-ouncer at Dunkin' Donuts on your way to drop off your kids and you sip it over 4 hours? When do you report that? So we really had to tease some of this out, and we did that very quickly within the first 15 to 20 people who were screening with us. And Obvio was awesome within a few days changing that for us. Video. So we were really concerned about engagement. Obviously, you saw that was a non-issue. We had enrolled to power for 75%, and we closed in at 90%. So amazing, overpowered, couldn't have been happier. But the next iteration would be to be able to have face-to-face built into the app, and Obvio has now done that.
Yeah. There were some uphill climbs with this study, for sure. But, they're going to be, right? In the industry, this is a new model. We're evolving the DCT model, so there's going to be little hiccups here and there. The issue is how quickly can you react? How quickly can you pivot to those? And so we took all of that feedback that Renovia gave us, all of the lessons learned, and we wanted to promote growth from that. So we are getting ready to actually launch our new next-gen platform coming up in a few months, and we've taken all that feedback and really tried to create a much more robust app, a much more robust platform and EDC to be able to support our clients and our participants. So just as an example, we have what's called Augmented ePro, which allows us to remove the subjectivity from those responses. So like normally when you're completing a questionnaire, let's just say an example, it'll ask you, how many wrinkles do you think you have? I may look in the mirror and say, oh my God, a lot of wrinkles. But then with Augmented ePro, because it has video capture, audio capture, image capture, we're able to do high-speed images from left to right, right to left, and then those images go back to an expert rater who can say, actually, you have moderate wrinkles, then I'll be so happy. So these are the things that the Augmented ePro can do. E-consent. I mean, our e-consent now is pretty tight, honestly. It has to be, right? But we have a lot more of an interactive process. The videos that Robin was talking about, we incorporated all that into that. So there's a million examples, but the most important thing is that with the DCT model, it's just easier. It is. It's just faster. It costs less money. And the most important thing is that what I'm talking about with the Augmented ePro, it's pristine data. It's robust. It's clean data. And that's what we're wanting. We're wanting to look for that. And when you're able to provide all of that and bring drugs to market that much quicker, I mean, we're changing the world. We're changing the world. That sounds dramatic, but it's very true because we can bring drugs to market much quicker and we can save on, and have that really pristine data be a part of that analysis. So we're just so excited to be a part of that. I never thought I'd see it in my 30-year career, but marrying the tech and the service is the way to go.
So I call it the recipe for success. Really pinpoint recruitment for the populations that we're looking to serve. The user-friendly app, both the Renovia team worked incredibly hard to make sure their app was great, and we talked about Obvio's app as well, and the virtual site team. And really, we would not have had the success we had with the engagement we had, with the power that we had if we hadn't partnered with Obvio on that. No, it was wonderful and no surprise for me. I've done 50 studies. This was an outstanding result. Almost no one was lost to follow-up.
Yay.
And there we go. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions?